No growling, and it wasn't fast, it was calm and nice.
Gotcha.
But he wanted to control things, I think.
Yeah. He did try to sit on the puppy too. I don't think that means anything.
That's true. Well, puppies are comfortable. Yeah, or Halloween costumes. That was the first and only time you met the puppy?
Yes.
Okay. No grumbling or anything like that?
There was one instance, so the puppy was playing with Blue, and while Blue was just laying down and was hanging off his ears, and Blue was doing really, really well with it. But the puppy kept going at his eye, and he let it happen quite a few times, but there was one time where I saw it and the puppy just got him, so he corrected him, he went at him. But he didn't come off of him, so then I corrected him. And then he came off and everything was fine again. So that was the only time where there was growling and a spat.
Okay, yeah. So you said he corrected him, but then he didn't remove himself?
They were kind of pinned, but it was a close quarters. I should have moved them, but they were between these couches. So by the time I felt like he should have come off of him, he wasn't. But he didn't keep going at him. He was just on him.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it sounds like he was just putting presence.
Yeah.
Letting the correction seep in, which is something that we do when we correct dogs and stuff, is we use presence and posture until we see the dog resolve the problem, then we ease it. So that was fine though. If you got the correction, you correct them for that. If you felt like it held it for too long. I would just see how the following interaction, is he going to meet the puppy again? Or?
Yeah, I think tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just keep an eye on the interactions, and if he always locks into hovering over him, you can either correct him, and by correcting you mean correcting yourself, correct? Yeah. I would correct them yourself and do the e-collar.
Okay.
Just because e-collar might shut him down. And
Yeah, I tried to not I used the e-collar if he was being disobedient, but I didn't in any form with the puppy, because I know how he reacts when I do it to the cat, and it's just to leave him alone, and I want them to be friends. And I think that they can be. He did really good yesterday for whenever he got there.
I don't know if this would tell you anything, but this is a little 2-minute.
a little charmer.
Yeah, he's a little chunky baby.
How old?
The puppy is almost 2 months. He just got all his shots.
He's a big little puppy.
He's gonna be a big boy.
Yeah.
They're not ready for it, I don't think. They thought he was gonna be blue sized, and I think he's gonna be much bigger.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be bigger too.
He's a lab,
Great Pyrenees.
Great Pyrenees mix, which is what our dog is also. Our dog has a little pit in her too.
She's tiny though.
But his bones, his bone structures.
Oh, he's thick.
Yeah, no, I mean, looking at him at 2 months, that's a big. We have a golden puppy that was here at 2 months, and she looks like maybe she was 2/3 his size
Yeah.
when she was, 8 weeks. Is there any blue and puppy interaction there?
I don't know, to be honest.
Did you just
Blue, I think, walked around about
I see Blue coming in now for the first time. Okay.
But I mean, to me, that shows you he could stay away.
Yeah, he doesn't seem. Yeah, he's I just saw he walk past the camera here.
He's not on the puppy.
No, he didn't stay on him and never let him out of his sight, but he was following him pretty closely.
Yeah. There's a great little. Yeah.
Good job.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't he, when I saw him pass by, he seemed nonchalant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's eye hand. To me, I thought it was a really calm.
Yeah, no,
And
for dogs to be social, it's coexistence.
Right.
I get dogs that just can't let go of another dog in the sense of wanting to engage. So I mean, it's social, but it's too social.
Right.
We put rules to those things. But from when I saw him and his demeanor walking around, he looked completely chill.
Dude, they were all nervous, and I'm we've brought puppies home, little puppies, and the adult dogs know that that's an infant, like, in my opinion, they know it's like a younger puppy, but he's also an adult dog, so he's going to like tell him like
Yeah.
enough, like knock that crap off, I
That's
don't wanna deal
correct.
with that.
Yeah, in the dog or animal world, like in our world, if we saw someone's child misbehaving, we don't discipline that child.
Right.
You may think that child needs to be disciplined,
Right,
but we don't do it, right? In the dog world, they do it.
Yeah.
You know, regardless if they know the puppy or not, they're just like, I'm an adult and you're a puppy and these are my boundaries and you're gonna learn them. And that's healthy, you know. The problem is that puppy belongs to someone else, right? So like, let's say they have a personal opinion on it. You know, that's where things kind of get tricky when it comes to, you know, dog to dog correction or dog to puppy corrections. Is, you know, we have some new puppies that came in this week for Puppy Head Start, and they were completely antisocial, wanted nothing to do with the other puppies, just sitting and crying and all that stuff. And most people go like, oh my god, and pick them up. I don't know, leave them in there, figure it out. And within like 30 minutes they're playing. You know, but people keep withdrawing the puppy before they're ready, and the next thing they're rewarding antisocial behavior. Or like if a puppy would be corrected by like one of my dogs, because I know my dogs correctly, I wouldn't how do you say, inhibit them on doing so, because I know they correct correctly. You know, but if I see someone other's dog looking like they need to correct, I correct that dog and then correct the puppy, because I don't know where that dog's gonna go. Right, because if that dog overcorrects, you know, and they actually punctures the puppy or something like that, now that's a whole different problem.
right.
You know, so it sounds like he did have to correct because the puppy was harassing whatever, and then you stepped in, which was good. And I would just be mindful of how much freedom that puppy has with Blue in terms of what they're able to do,
Okay.
because it can work the other way. It's not a guarantee. This is just like the possibility, right?
Yeah.
Is that if Blue gets annoyed by that puppy because the puppy's constantly harassing him, he's then not gonna like the puppy, right? So then if I feel like it looks like it's too much, then I step in and I correct the puppy for Blue, and then Blue goes, okay, cool. I don't have to worry about this being on me all the time because Mom will step in and address the puppy for me. So it's kind of a balance of things, you know. In my book, humans should always regulate the dogs, kind of like kids. Kids aren't supposed to like regulate each other. It's for the adults and the teachers and the authorities and all that stuff. That's for them to do.
Right.
Because when kids regulate themselves, then it just ends up in bigger spats. You know, because he's not going to rationalize. Like, yes, recognize his puppy, but dogs also kill the puppies. You know, so I think you're perfectly fine. But if you see the puppy being a little too rambunctious, I have no problem correcting them to like let him know like.
Which I think the puppy may when he comes to our house,
Yeah,
because he's.
they're gonna need to work with him a little bit. They're gonna have some fun times.
Yeah. Okay. So that was good. Anything else?
No, it's been a nice week.
All right. Excellent. So with the socialization stuff, we wanted to work on how and we were talking about people, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How to introduce them to new people. Is this both within and out the home, or is
Yeah, because I'm still uncomfortable a little bit like outside of the house too with people coming up. Like I'll just say no for the most part, just because I don't know how he'll react.
Okay. We have our muzzle.
Yep.
Yep. Let's go ahead. We're gonna pop the muzzle on. I'm gonna show you a couple exercises here. Okay. Should be fine. Because he doesn't fight it, right?
He hasn't been lately, but
Sometimes.
sometimes he still does.
Okay. Is it does he
He paws
fight it
in
considerably, or is it just like a paw here and there?
a paw here and there.
Okay, I think we're fine then. So, there's a couple of ways of socializing. We have the approach, human approaches dog, and the dog approaches human. Okay? Human approaches dog tends to be the hardest because it's anytime you move towards a dog or an animal, a person, whatever, it's confrontational. Except as humans, like if if you greet someone on the street and you're like, hi, how are you? Like you hear the hi and you're like, it's just somebody saying hello,
Right.
despite the fact that the approach is face to face. So I read a book back when I still read books years ago about body language. And it was super interesting because for us in the city, it's not uncommon to be 2 to 3 feet away from someone. Like you're very close, especially on the CT and the bus and walking on the sidewalk, right? But people who live out in a more rural area, where like homes are miles apart, they greet, I think 8 to 20 feet away. Okay, and if you greet any closer than that, it's considered threatening, or it's perceived as threatening because people are so distant from each other. Okay, so like how you're raised, or where you grew up, or where you live, all kind of changes your perception of what's appropriate and what's not. So it's kind of the same thing for dogs. Is every dog when you move into them cannot help but feel confrontation. Okay, but years of experiences of you walking to him has kind of taught him that it's not confrontational always, right? So like my pit, if she's laying on the couch and I go to greet her to say hi, and I just walk towards her, her tail will start wagging.
Right.
Okay? A lot of people perceive that as excited or happy, which you can be excitement, but or they'll see it as happy, and it's actually nervousness. Okay, because you're putting confrontation on the brain, so the tail starts to go off because the brain's going, what is this going to be? Is this going to be confrontation, or what is this, right? Because, and I don't greet my dogs excitedly. I just walk up to him and go pet him, but as I'm approaching, you'll just start to see the tail, or my chihuahua, you'll just see his ears go back and he'll just kind of slink down because you're perceiving confrontation. Okay, so if we add in the fact that he may not know the person very well, or maybe it's a completely new person or whatever, he's more likely to perceive threats.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, just if somebody comes up to Blue, well, to any dog, and the dog is relaxed or whatever and starts wagging its tail, that doesn't mean like, hi, I'm happy to see you.
Not always, right? Like I perceive, when I looked at it and I've seen, like, cause people, like, the dog's ears will go back and all that stuff, right? It's very submissive. I'm reading that as the dog's perceiving confrontation, but it's not, like, let's say you got like the friendliest golden retriever, right? And then as you approach them, ears go back and the tail's wagging and stuff. It's more like a nervous response.
It's just like Ivy. Ivy does that every single time you go to pet her.
I was thinking Ivy too.
Now, and then you can even test like when you do it calmly versus when you do it with an excited energy, right? Because then if you're coming in, right, now the energy that you're bringing out is creating excitement. But if you remove that and you just approach the dog and the ears go back and the tail starts to wag, that's a nervous response.
Yeah, it's definitely Ivy.
Okay, so when you add that to a dog like Blue, who has nervous tendencies, and you put that confrontation on them, I would anticipate that I would see some kind of aggressive response. Okay, which is normal. So, everybody responds to situations differently according to their personality type. So that's why when I work with a dog, and if I know it's an anxious, nervous, or fearful dog, I can just call out things for the owner and tell them these are things that you're going to expect with this type of personality. Okay, so that puts them a step ahead because they're not. To them, it seems like this does not seem normal. I'm like, well, it's not normal for the typical stable dog, but for your anxious, nervous dog, whatever, it is normal. Because I see these responses from these type of personality types all the time. So like nervous dogs tend to trigger when there's a sudden change, either a loud noise or someone jumps up, something like kind of just quick or a quick movement. They tend to trigger with those things. Anxious dogs move around a lot. They don't settle. They'll like lay down, stand up, start walking around, lay down, stand up, start walking around. They just can't settle. Usually a lot of panting, salivating. Fearful dogs tend to stay away. If something comes in that triggers them, they'll start barking and they won't let it go really. And they'll even if they quiet down, they'll still be grumbling. They'll still kind of be watching whatever it is from a distance. And as soon as it moves, they move back and start barking. Whereas a nervous response dog just triggers when something moves, and sometimes it even triggers and goes to real quick, right? So once you know those things and you know what your dog is, it kind of just puts you a step ahead, because then, like if somebody just jumped up randomly in the home, and I know I have Blue, right away I'm like, jumping in the home looking at Blue, right? I'm not assuming he's gonna do something, but I'm like, oh, that's gonna be a trigger, and I just go to it, so then if I see him about to just respond, I can catch it right there, okay? So, it's nothing good or bad, it's just how he's wired. So moving to Blue is the hardest approach that there is, because they're just coming directly into his immediate space, and it puts on confrontation under the brain. Now, everything that you've been doing these past few weeks, okay, is the discipline that you've instilled in like the remoting and the making more stressed about breaking commands or like being corrected for things that you don't want, helps the brain accept new stressors in a healthier fashion. Okay, so I have another case right now that we just had our third class, and the dog's bitten a couple of people. The dog actually growled at me here. She was sitting right there, and I was sitting right here. Then I think I just went like this, and the dog started growling. I think even growled, lunged, and barked, right? And I was like, that's a nervous response, because something just changed, right? And she did 2 classes on heel, because this was the dog was already e-collar trained and stuff like that. But it was on a really low number, like 5 to 8, and I was like, nope. I'm like, we're gonna put on some real discipline. We're gonna bump it up. I think we ended up being like 35 to 45. Come to 3rd class, she was right here, and Enrique came in with the bike suit on and went straight for the dog, and the dog wagged his tail and let him pedal. Okay, and she had never met him before. Okay, because the brain has now been calmed down because of all the discipline. That there was nothing to really feed the nervousness. Plus, the dog wasn't being territorial over the owner because now he had more of a respect factor for the owner. And then she was like, I literally, what the hell just happened?
Right.
And I was like, this is why we did what we, because a human aggressive dog, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Like it's like they're coming in and it's like, it's a problem.
Yeah.
And in her cases, I'm like, there's a lot of things that are happening. Person came into the home, dog was being territorial, never met the person before. There's all these factors, and I'm going, that sounds like a valid bite, and it sounds like it was triggered because of nervousness. So then once we did a little bit of discipline, calmed the dog down, put some rules on him, he wasn't the head honcho anymore, it just
So are
shifted.
are there some dogs that just hate humans that you like,
Oh yeah,
that
it's
just like?
super rare,
Okay.
super rare, but yeah, you know, or they're just so, you know, because there's Rotties and dogs that are 150 to 200 pounds or whatever, and there's so much liability there that it's like I don't even worry about
Yeah.
trying to get the dog to like be pet by everybody. It's like here, muzzle your dog anytime the dog's around a person, and then e-collar all the time, and just a lot of precautions.
Those are weapons.
Yeah, that's the dog can kill somebody. So, so what we're gonna do here with Blue is I'm gonna show you the 2 different types of approaches. Okay, I'm gonna show you it's in with kids too. I'm
Okay.
assuming that's important, right?
Yeah,
How you're
it
gonna approach with
is.
kids. Okay, so we're gonna start with that first. It's a very structured step-by-step exercise. It's very simple. And then with kids, I pair it with food. And it's gonna put you at the most control for Blue. And then I'm gonna show you how to actually get Blue to start approaching people. Okay, so if he's still kind of apprehensive of people, his brain cannot help that. It's literally just a stimulus response, right? So we're gonna actually counter him and teach him that instead of wanting to move away from people, he should actually move into them. So then it doesn't allow the brain to go into flight mode, and it will allow him to start opening up. Okay, so we're gonna start first with the kid one. I'm gonna have you just bring Blue up here. You're gonna stand with him at your side.
He's like, what's this new level of power?
And go ahead and come a step or 2 closer. That's good right there. And go ahead and come in a sitting position. Right, and what you're gonna do here is you're gonna swoop him with your hand so that his butt's over by your left leg. Good. And what you do is you're gonna crouch down and you're gonna choke up on your leash with your right hand, and then with your left hand, you're gonna just wrap around his shoulder. Like that, okay? And the reason why I do this with kids is because, let's say he really doesn't like kids, okay? And he tries to, because when you approach from the side, if he were to try to go for a bite, your left arm is blocking him, okay? With choking up on the leash, you're limiting how far that head's gonna go, okay? So this puts you in full control. I don't, allow him to lay down. If you allow him to lay down, there's too much space for him. There's too much space for him to, like when we do reactivity stuff, if I let the dog lay down, the owner usually gives more slack, which means the dog can go farther.
Yeah.
Right, so I do sitting, because then if I short it, I'm right there by the dog. So kind of similar mentality here, is by doing this, you have, he's very limited, we're not tense, we're not like hugging him very tight to keep him at your side, it's just there,
Right.
gently but firmly. up tap, and a little bit forward tap. Yeah, like that, and just swoop his butt over.
You're such a big boy.
There you go. So if we're dealing with the kid, the first thing is always, if you can, control their energy, okay? Because then if the kid's like, oh my God, you gotta go, or anything like that, and they're down on his level, it's really just projecting them, right? So that's gonna make them feel unsettled. So what I do is I have the child stop about 4 to 6 feet away, and then when you get set up like this, and I tell them, if you want to pet my dog, that's fine, but you have to follow my instructions, okay? And I've sent kids away crying because they're like, but I don't want to pet the dog. I'm like, nope. Unless you do what I tell you, you're not going to touch this dog.
Right.
It's not going to hurt me if you don't pet my dog, right? So, so from a distance here, this will give you a feel of how he feels. Okay, so if the kid approaches here and maybe you heard a grumble, what does that tell us?
He doesn't like it.
He already doesn't like it,
Yeah.
right? So we're already starting off with, I don't like this. If you're trying to push this, even if that growl happens, that's the point of this exercise, is you can do a tap on the remote, okay? And it would be at whatever your operating number is there. It doesn't have to be harsh, okay? So you're correcting the growl. And I know there's a whole thing about like, well, if you correct the growl, you're taking away the dog's warning sign. We'll talk about that a little bit later, okay?
Okay.
So here, we don't let him go to 1, because if you can go to 1, then you can go to 10, okay? So I correct the growl. Now wait a moment, see what he does. He might shift a little bit, and then he might turn his head away or look away from the kid. That's the avoidance response. That's fine. Once he's settled, then I have the child move around and come from the side. Okay? To make it easy, to make it easier.
That's what we call the side eye.
Side eye, yeah. To make it easier for him to handle the approach. Okay? Because most kids, when they come in and remember they're coming in at his level, right? And they're coming in like this feels very threatening for him.
Yeah.
Okay? So if we're trying to get him to trust kids, we're going to do it in a manner that's going to be more favorable for them. Okay? So coming from the side is non-threatening. So if I'm here and I'm this close to Blue, right? We can be like 4 inches away. Then imagine if I was to be 4 inches from you like this. Right?
Right.
Like that, you can already think like that's going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But if we take that and I just come here, all of a sudden all the pressure you would feel would go away. Okay? Same thing for Blue. And then when the kids go to touch, so if they're here, maybe he grumbles again, you would tap, wait a moment, let him settle, and then I have him start at the back. Okay? Back here. Okay? I don't like starting. When is he moving?
Just put your thing
I don't.
Is that?
I don't start at the head or the neck area. You can see I lick his lips a little bit, because I'm already starting a danger zone. Right? You're going straight for what he doesn't want, which is going for this personal area. So I have to start from the side.
So
Here.
is the licking, is that, so 20 years ago when I was training our lab, I was taught that licking like that, when the dog licks their lips, they're like thinking, or they're like, they're trying to do what you want, but they might be confused. So like when you're touching him and he's licking,
Right.
is he trying to like think it through, or is he like thinking about tasting you?
So when I see lip licking, this is for me a stress response, which
Okay.
means I'm not too comfortable with what's going on right now.
Okay.
Okay, which is nothing good or bad. Okay,
Okay.
he's just saying I'm uncomfortable right now. Okay,
Okay.
so I go, okay, we're reading that sign. Okay,
Okay.
but as I'm petting him and the thing that he's unsure about keeps happening, right? Then I go like, does he advance from lip licking? Because it would go from lip licking to intense staring to growling, for example.
Okay.
That's the escalation. But it started with I'm uncomfortable. Okay, here he went to I'm uncomfortable, but then stopped lip licking and then doesn't care anymore. Does that make sense? So lip lick, like, let's say you try this with a kid and he's here and the kid approaches, he might lip lick right there. Because he's saying this kid being 4 to 6 feet up me is uncomfortable.
Okay.
It's nothing good or bad, but it puts you if you can tap it forward.
He's trying to lay down.
Yeah. It puts you at an advantage because you're already aware of the situation. Okay. So then, from the back, I start to move towards the front and the shoulders and stuff. right? And you can see how he's just like looking at me. He's got a passive stare, but he's really just kind of like, why is this guy so close to me, right? So then here, as they're petting and touching, they start to go up, and I'm feeling here, he's not too tense. I feel a little tension up here on his shoulders, but all this feels fine, okay? Right there, you hear that?
Grumble.
A little grumble, okay? Forward, good. And then you see how he's postured here? See how he's giving me his back? He's looking from the side. Looks very awkward,
Yeah,
okay? So when I was going back here, not the biggest fan, but then as I started to go up here, that's when I started to, it wasn't a growl, it's just like a weird,
Grumble or something.
yeah, exactly, right. And you can see how he's kind of locked up here, okay? Because we're pressing, I'll give him a break there. I'll give you a break too for your knees. We're pressing his comfort zone. Because when's the last time someone who hasn't pet him? Or who hasn't, yeah.
Not for a while.
the last would be the vet,
Yeah.
And how long ago was the vet?
June.
June, okay. How is
And
he?
they said, they said he was nervous and uncomfortable, but didn't try anything.
Sure.
That was the word they
That was the
used,
word
yeah.
they used.
Sure. So they probably saw like what I saw right there. You know, where he's just kind of tense and awkward and like,
He
I'm
gives a
not
lot
sure.
of side eye, but doesn't, it's just, it makes me uncomfortable, because if he does that to a kid, I'm not letting the kid stay there, you know, like at this point.
Sure.
I think the other reason we're uncomfortable is, I think we know he's uncomfortable, but the 2 times where he's gone at somebody
Mhm.
has been.
He was comfortable.
He was, it seemed like he was comfortable
Mhm.
and then went.
Sure.
But the one time for sure, because I saw it, it's exactly what you said, where he was fine, everything was fine, and then Hannah stood up and the other person leaned forward.
Mhm.
So it was both things, it was like
Yeah.
Hannah leaned, boom, and it was Hannah up, leaning, and he came forward here.
Correct.
The other one I didn't see.
The other one, it was with a kid that he had been introduced to, and it was pretty fine. I would say like Blue kind of was like a little bit of this, but I didn't recognize it at that time. And the kid was hand feeding him treats,
Mhm.
and it was fine, and then I turned and all of a sudden it was just one snap at the kid's face. And I forget now, I don't know if he like squealed at first or if the kid had done something, like
Sure.
maybe
That
taking
little
the
part,
treat
yeah.
away or something, like there's just something there that I missed.
Sure.
But they had been doing okay for a little while before that, so.
And how long's a little while?
They were probably there for like an hour or so, right? Or was
I
it
don't know,
only,
I wasn't there.
I can't remember now.
Like,
It
right
was
after the whole.
over half an hour, but maybe under an hour that they had been like introduced and he was letting or letting the kid head in and everything, so.
Sure. So then the other thing we have to think about, like going back to that puppy earlier, or if you ever feel like the puppy's becoming too much, you step in. It's kind of the same thing with kids, right? Where everything seems fine, but then he's like, you know what?
I'm done
This
with
is
it.
too, yeah, this is too
Yeah.
much.
Well, and then I'm just realizing, it's like what you just said, like, I'm gonna give him a break. Like, it was going well.
So we let
should
it
have
keep
given
going,
him a
yeah.
break.
Correct. Yeah, because then it becomes like, this is why I don't like kids. You know? 'Cause then-
They never stop.
Exactly.
They're constantly pushing Cheerios.
Yeah, even if their energy is passive and stuff, like it can still become too much, right? Because he doesn't think like we do,
Okay.
right? So here, in order to get past that hump of trusting, like distrusting and trusting, all that stuff, you have to put yourself in a situation, right? Now, I personally don't care how you advance them, as long as you feel good with what you know. But if it's like, if you want to be able to trust him around people, you have to put him in those situations. Because
Right.
keeping him out of those situations is actually what makes everything worse. And it's the most common thing that I get, right?
Right.
Oh, my dog's got in a fight, so we separated them, and now every time they see each other, they want to kill each other. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, because you separated them. You know, the dog went after somebody, and then they withdraw from like the world, right? And they only take their dogs out at certain times and stuff because they're trying to avoid people or trying to avoid other dogs or whatever on the street, and then they just make the dog more antisocial.
I don't
Okay?
think that's kind of where we were headed.
Yeah. So in order to become social, you have to expose them to it. Okay. So social ability is it's like a muscle. if you don't like work it out, you know, like you lose it.
Yeah.
And me, at the very start of my business, like I'm very easy to talk to now, but I'm actually a very quiet, passive person, you know. But because I run my business and I talk to clients and stuff, and I also bartended.
You're forced to.
Yeah, so like, but so I have a strong social muscle, you know?
Mhm.
So for this guy, his social muscle is gonna need to be worked, and that just requires more exposure,
But I
okay?
think you and I have talked about, because Hannah's a lot like that, so you probably go home at the end of the day and you're really glad to be done talking and you just want to chill. You want to be kind of left alone.
Sure.
Which she's like that, and
Uh-huh.
that's him too then, Hannah, he needs like
And
like
be
I
comfortable.
socialized and now let me be done.
Correct. You know, because if you, so, and then and I come in all the time, and even when I work with my really aggressive dogs, you know, when they come in and stuff, I'll tell them like, don't always make, when someone comes over, don't always make your dog have to greet them, or don't always make the person greet them. Give some breaks sometimes, so the dog doesn't feel like, oh crap, that, you know, it's
Here we
always
go
a
again.
guarantee, exactly, it's a guarantee it's gonna happen, right?
Mhm.
So, because, you know, he's a living, breathing creature, and we're not that different. You know, like right now we were saying like, you need space at the end of a long day with having to talk to people and all that stuff, right? Just kind
Right.
of decompress. Like there's dogs like that too. Like we have a dog, they used to come to our daycare. They moved recently, she used to come all the time. And within like 20 minutes of playing, she would just walk by the gate and sit down.
She's like, oh no.
So yeah, we would just loop her. She would just like put her head out. We'd loop her, she'd come out, go in her kennel, and she'd just observe. You know?
I think that's him. That's what he does at a lot of dog parks, is he doesn't
He'll
get
lay
very
down.
involved. He'll just watch from a distance.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and then there's people like that too, like, they can do something for a little bit, then it's like, okay, just step away and just kind of like decompress or whatever, okay? So, the more you know about him, the more you can like,
Help him.
push him, but in a healthy fashion,
Mhm.
right? And if like you see a kid, that kid's energy, like, for whatever reason, you're like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea, don't do it,
Mhm.
right? Because that's your instinct and what you know about Blue, like speaking to you and saying like, probably not gonna be a good situation, like, I don't worry about it, right? Because then that's how you take steps back. Okay, so a part of trust is, you know, it's recognizing something and not having to not forcing him through it. Does that make sense? Like,
So that he can trust that you've got his back, or that
Yeah,
you're
you know,
gonna
in human
take care of,
words.
I don't always need to take care of everything because you take care of it.
Well,
Correct.
then we're not gonna put him in a bad situation. or
Correct.
anything.
I see that with anxious children, it's like they start trying to control everything because they don't feel like anybody's controlling anything.
sure. So actually, I had a client, she brought her grandson, and he was like, maybe like 4 to 6 years old, I believe, and we were meeting at a dog park. And I was like, hey buddy, right? And he just went, whoop, and hid right behind her. So then I was like, okay, and I just like ignored him, and then I just talked to her, and for the rest of the class, I just talked to her, I just kind of pretended he wasn't there. And by like the last 10 to 15 minutes, he was like tugging my shirt, and he's like, hey,
Wanted your attention.
look at me. And then he started climbing up on the wall. I'm like, good job, bud. Right at that point, you know, like he was just, and I saw him, he was just sitting there observing me as I was talking to her and stuff. I paid him no mind as soon as I recognized you don't want to be talked to, right? And I just took a step
Respect
back.
that.
And then he realized, like, okay, cool, like this guy gets it.
Yeah.
Because dogs are the same thing. When you put energy on them and they don't want it, they'll move away. So then I ignore them,
Mhm.
you know, and they may by the end of the hour start sniffing and approaching me and saying, hey, pay attention to me, or they might stay back. I go, that's fine. Like, you know, like, it doesn't mean anything to me, but that's how I develop the dog's trust, because I don't force those kinds of things,
Mhm.
okay? So it's a balance of both things. Yes, I want to press him, because that's what's going to make him more sociable. I also think about what's realistically applicable to your life with Blue,
Mhm.
right? Because if it's like, he'd never be around kids, then it's kind of like, well, why socializing with kids then? But if it's
Right.
like, we have family with kids, then it
Right.
obviously makes sense, okay? So we're gonna try that exercise again. I'm gonna go ahead and have you prop him up. There you go.
Can I ask you one question though, about like his temperament? So now we've been with you for like 10 hours now,
Mhm.
but I've yet to see him show an interest in you.
Correct.
So, like, is that, and some of it might be like your body language has just said like, I'm here, you're here, whatever.
Mhm.
But
I just
what
know
if
that
he
wants
did
to
approach
be-
you, like, would, I don't know, I guess that's the other thing I'm wondering is like, when he, I don't know, we'll go through this exercise again, I'm having trouble formulating my
I-
Are you
question. You know what I'm saying,
asking
like,
if he approaches him, what he should do in that situation?
no, like, what if, okay, so Jesse you work with dogs, you have a body language that you communicate with. So what if you're on the street and, I don't know who's this is,
Uh-huh.
but for some reason he wants to
Meet him?
go that way.
Mhm.
There's a different body language, right?
On the person's part or the dog's part?
Probably both.
Um,
How does Hannah know, like, he's excited, like, I
Okay.
don't wanna say excited, but happy to go, like, I'm coming at you, I mean, it's obviously, if a dog.
Like, I
comes-
wanna be pet by you, or I think I might wanna
Well,
bite you?
to me, like, growl, growl, bite, snap, snap is obvious, but if he approaches a person, you know, like,
He doesn't
I'm trying to
side
think of,
eye
like,
thing.
it's been a long time since we've let him
so
approach
I
someone.
kind
You know
of
what
get
I'm
an idea what you're talking about. So like here, does Blue look interested?
Not a bit.
Okay, so here, I see a dog like that, I don't approach him. Cause he's telling me I'm you know, sideways, I'm very awkward, I'm stooped, right? I go, that's a dog that's not interested,
Right,
okay? Any other dog, I come in like this, and the dog goes,
right,
starts to wiggle.
right.
That tells me I'm interested.
Mhm.
And then, I go down like this, dog forges forward.
Right,
Right, but the initiation was I'm wiggling because I love people, and when I crouch down, that's an invitation. Okay, it's an invitation to him as well. He just doesn't want the invitation.
yeah,
Okay.
so, because our other dog would, that's exactly what would happen. Ivy would have
She would
been
have
all over you
tackled
by
you
now, and then
already.
she'd be over,
So that's how you read him. Okay,
yep,
and like let's say, and on that topic, I shouldn't say any other, but like a lot of other dogs, same issue that we work with. For instance, that lady just told you about, her video's up on YouTube, Taco, if you want to see. You'll see, actually, that's a good video for you to watch, because Enrique comes in and the dog just goes. Okay? And watch the consultation video, and you'll see the difference in the demeanor. Because he's like kind of like this, he's laying at her feet, he's leaning sideways because he's body blocking, right? And then I move and right? And then you go to class 3 and you see Enrique come in with the suit, and you see the dog there, and he's just like this.
Completely different.
Completely
yeah.
different, okay?
Yeah.
And I've had other dogs that I've worked with, like Blue, week 4, 6, whatever, I do nothing with them. And it starts off first like this, and then by week 4 or whatever, I come in, now the dog's like, hey.
Mhm.
That happened to me with somebody, the dog's name is Star Fox. And it was class 3 or 4, and this is a dog that has bitten people and dogs. Okay, he's both human and dog active. And come the 3rd or 4th class, I walked up and he ran up to me, wagging his tail, and she's like, "Oh, hey, he likes you." And it was funny because in my head I go, until I do something he doesn't like. And then later that class he did bite me. Because I was pulling him away for the owner to do recall, and he was getting frustrated, he was getting separation anxiety, and then he ended up redirecting and biting me in the leg, but I didn't get my wallet. And then she was like, "That's so weird." She's like, "But he was so happy
He was
to
so
see
happy.
you."
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah," but then I started doing something he didn't like. Right? That's the thing. People take it as face value,
right.
right? That this dog is 100%.
He either
friendly
likes
with
you or
you.
he doesn't.
Yeah, and it can be contingent on the moment. If it's not, I just don't like you. Period. Okay. So it's a constant conversation. Just like if you came home and like you sensed Hannah was in a bad mood, or if you sensed something upsetting her, you most likely say something, right? Everything okay? Because you recognize that.
Or I might avoid it.
Or so you'll do that for Blue. Is you're recognizing how does he feel about the situation.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in the beginning, it starts off with awkwardness.
Mhm.
So just because he doesn't like it now doesn't mean he won't like it later.
Okay.
Okay. I get a lot of dogs when we force them to things in the beginning, they completely are like, don't want to be here. They're shaking, they're salivating, their eyes are really big because they're going past that comfort zone.
Mhm.
And then we do weeks of exposure and stuff, and the next thing you know, they're like, oh, too bad.
Yeah.
And then they open up, okay? So the only way to know what Blue is capable of, and if there's a change to be done, is to actually do it, if you want. Okay? So I would take a step or two forward, and I'm gonna stop, Yep, and then you'll reposition yourself. There you go. So you saw he like wiggles his tail for you and everything like that. Don't wiggle his tail for me. Come back. See the side eye, of course. Now what I like is that he doesn't twitch. A lot of dogs will twitch when they don't want the touch.
Mhm.
They like literally go like that. So I'm going here. So it's a little bit soft. I just work my way up. And I do it much slower for the bit. See when I go up
Yeah,
over the
I
ears?
saw the
Yeah.
looking there, yeah.
No. And making sure that they understand and listen to the fact of gentle, right? Not super crazy or anything like that. Slow and gentle, not being loud either, ideally, if they can. I do give them a little bit of leniency because I know they're kids. But that energy, especially with the nervous dog like this, is unsettling. Okay. Now to get him over it, he does have to be exposed to it. But in the beginning, I may say like, oh, no energy here, or like, well, be calm, be gentle, and all that stuff.
Okay.
And then, not that it's not good to expose them to those energies because they're going to be out there, and the more you expose them, the more more progress you're going to make. Okay. But if he doesn't take to a loud kid, I don't hold that against him because I don't like loud kids.
Right.
Okay. Does that make sense there?
Yep.
Okay, so that's the easiest approach. And then what we do is when the kid's touching them, if possible, you're feeding them treats.
Okay.
Chicken, cheese, hot dog, bologna, whatever. I use the good stuff. And I do it only with kids.
Is it, so I think this was part of the mistake that we made. Is it ever a good idea to let the kids feed him treats?
You can, but what we're doing here is what's called counter conditioning. And you're tying when the kid's touching them with the feeding.
Yep.
And then when the kid stops, the feeding stops.
Okay.
Okay, so then he's going, oh, when kids touch, food happens. When kids don't touch, food goes away. Right? So that's part of it. You can also allow them, maybe at the end, to give them a little something.
Because I just didn't know if it was a good idea to mix food into like introducing, just because like, at least with his sister, he gets like, they both kind of get a little food aggressive.
Sure.
But like, he's never been like that with humans until it's someone he doesn't know, I
Yeah.
think.
And that's normal.
Okay.
Like my dogs, I can take whatever from them,
Yeah,
Right.
but if you tried, they wouldn't let you.
right.
Okay? And that's fine.
I think Ivy's does much more resource guarding than he does.
Yeah, if he didn't have Ivy, I don't think he would resource guard at all.
No.
But
But yeah, you can, that's fine because it's coming from the kid, right?
it
But
shouldn't
then,
make it worse or any, like more possessive or anything with the kid having food.
no, if the kid is presenting him something, it's not his,
Okay.
right? Like, there shouldn't be any guarding here.
Okay.
Okay, now if it's the kid puts something at his feet
And then goes
and
to take
and
it.
goes to take it or stays in the area, because what happens is the brain goes from, oh, there's food, to possessing it while you still here.
Yeah.
Okay, but if they're keeping it in their hand, they just offer it to him, it should be a real quick, I just eat it and we're done.
Okay.
Okay, but unless it's sitting there at his feet and they try to re-enter or they stand or hovering too close, we shouldn't see resource guarding.
Okay.
Okay.
But think about the difference between what Jesse's saying, like with Gavin. Like how Gavin was sitting and Blue approached him and Blue was in control like that whole
Yeah.
time. And then Gavin would shift and Blue lost his mind.
Yeah.
Where I think if Gavin had approached quietly, which Gavin would, he's a
Yeah.
quiet guy, I think that would be a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Was there continuous, like, was there a lot of food here?
In that situation, no. My head's going back to the time when he went at the face of the little kid, because I know the kid had, like, he was presenting the food and there wasn't an issue, but he also had the food and then was like going like this. So I was trying to think if like maybe Blue wanted all the like.
He might have
Yeah, I was just
that
wondering,
Gavin was
yeah,
coming back in and he went in with
Yeah,
him.
because he's like taking the food away.
And that's
so-
also a valid point too. Both of those are valid points.
Yeah.
One, he either followed the hand, or maybe he didn't get all the food, so when he was coming back, he was
Yeah.
trying to get more. Or he realized, oh, there's more food here, and was just being impatient about it. Because a dog can snap and it can look aggressive, but it's not aggressive.
Yeah.
So also within the moment of if you turn, you just saw that action, it's not a full, like,
Right.
picture. But
Right.
all those sound like
Because
valid points.
I've had our dogs, I think he's even done it to me, where it's not aggressive, where like, I'll have something in my hand in the kitchen and he happens to be there. And
Oh, sure.
obviously, the way I turn, he thinks I'm presenting it to him, but actually I'm not.
I don't think
and
it
kind of-
wasn't bad in this situation, it was just, to me, I didn't know if like we had made it worse giving the kid food to feed to him, do you know what I mean?
Oh, I see what you're saying, like.
Yeah, but Jesse's saying you would be giving him the food.
Yeah.
The association is with quiet kid petting, the touching,
Mom gives
mom is
food.
giving the food.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
That keeps the mouth away from the kid the whole time.
Mhm.
Questions about that?
If he, so like, when he was, sitting there with you, I could feel him really, really leaning into me.
Mhm.
If he does that to the point where he goes and lays down, but kind of like rolls over submissively,
Oh, sure.
can I let the person keep petting him, or should I fix him and try?
You can, but then I keep that left arm there. Because
Okay.
it can always go from, I like this to I don't like this.
Okay,
Okay? And then being mindful of how the person's going about it. Like if he rolled over for me, I'd still be sideways petting him. Whereas a lot of people I think would just start to
Go
lean over.
double handers.
Exactly. Like you have to control the energy.
okay.
Okay? Because if they all of a sudden go like, oh my God, you rolled over for me, oh my God, right? And they go like that, that energy is just shifted like 180, went from passive calm to like, oh my God, right? So he's gonna be like, what?
Yeah,
Which I would say is normal for a nervous dog.
So if his head had gone around to snap at you, is it like you're pulling,
You just close
yanking
in.
him in, you're yanking him this like back
You're
towards
just
you?
containing, yeah, you're just containing like that. So that's why I like that, because you have the short leash. So even if he tried to go forward, he can't get far.
Uh-huh.
And if he tries to go left,
You
he
just
can't.
bring him.
You can come like this and you block the mouth.
Okay,
And it's not gonna go anywhere, and then you can,
I have
remove or whatever.
kind of a side, I don't think it really applies to us,
Mhm.
but in that situation, if I'm like holding him like this, if he turns this way, and could he bite me? I don't think he ever would, just because of my relationship with him, but
Mhm.
like a redirect bite.
I mean, there's always the possibility of a redirect when a dog becomes aggressive and you're doing like, either remote or like what you're saying if you're trying to contain them.
Yeah,
So it's a possibility. I've never seen it happen
okay,
with clients when they do this, because it's usually they're going after the target.
yeah,
But also, I've always had people muzzle their dogs, just in case.
regardless, yeah.
Because what can happen is if he gets too frustrated and you go to contain, right, and he wants to get out, but like, for me, I'm thinking like that's a dog that really wants to do harm,
Okay.
okay, and I don't pick that up from Blue at
Yeah,
all.
I don't think that we'd have that issue, I
Yeah.
was just kind of curious, because like, this feeling, it feels like I'm leaving myself a little open that way.
Yeah, no, that's technically correct, right? So I don't, and I'm not, when doing these exercises, like I wouldn't be obviously really close there, but
Mhm.
with that muzzle, it
It'll
keeps
be
you
fine, yeah.
safe
I
as
think if
well.
you've got the leash, I would think your reaction would be to pull him.
Well,
Down.
if it's gonna be a little kid, then my reaction is just to get him away from him. I don't know if I'll be thinking clear enough to like, be like, okay, down, away from my face.
I think
Sure.
instinctively you probably would.
And if you did see something, don't overreact. Okay?
Yeah.
I know it means a lot because we're dealing with a child, but the moment you're like, no, right, and
Right.
you overreact, you
Yes,
actually made it worse.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you ever see me work with an aggressive dog, I'm calm. Calm, and even if I have to put out energy, it's assertive energy. It's not angry energy.
Okay.
Okay. Like I have a video that I need to put up, but we were trying to get the footage together. Is where we had a dog get out of muzzle and come after myself and a couple of employees, and she's been the owner, so she's gonna bite. And because they were taking her into the facility and the dog slipped out of the muzzle and the collar and just was completely off leash. And I immediately went into confrontation and put myself between the dog and my employees. And then she like was panicked. So she's like looking around and she sees me and she starts to lunge at me and starts snapping, and I gave a quick kick. And then she kind of like went back a little bit, but then charged in again. And I think it took two more before I got her good on the jaw, and she yipped and then stepped back. Then there was no more conflict,
Mhm.
right? But in that moment, even though I asserted myself, and there was I just did I did the Caesar hiss. I did like hey, like so
Yeah.
firm hey, and everything else was quiet, just holding my ground, but I wasn't like over reacting to the
Shouting and-
situation,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So if I get a dog that flips out on me, you'll just see me there holding the dog, and my energy is neutral, so I can get the dog to decompress and de-escalate, and then I just relax with them.
Okay.
And I've had some pretty dicey moments.
Yeah.
But it's when people overreact or try to overcompensate that creates a bigger problem. So if he did go, I just body block and I hold, right? And then go for that remote, give a tap to just settle the brain, then relax, reposition, and then repeat if we're gonna repeat.
So, and that's an important piece there then too, it's not pull him away, because then
Don't end
he
it.
The
actually
last
got,
thing he remembers is I went after a kid and.
I flailed around or whatever I did and I got away.
Mhm,
Okay,
yeah.
yep,
And you may read stuff where it's like, well, then you'll create like all these issues and stuff. And if he has to technically try it to see, is this gonna work? And we go, no,
Yeah.
okay.
right? Now, and then we continue with the exercise, right? And then days later, we try it again, and we try it again. And then maybe you see he doesn't warm up the kids. And it's just like, you don't like kids, right? Or he starts to warm up the kids. I've had some dogs where it's like, I thought that this ain't gonna get far. And they completely 180,
Mhm.
And I've got other cases where I'm like, oh, this should be pretty straightforward. And it's not. There's no guarantee that anything with dogs. They're living creatures, they have their own feelings and boundaries and all that stuff. But we don't know unless we try it, is essentially how that works, So don't be discouraged if that did or does happen. It's part of the process, we see it all the time, but we just keep working on it, whereas most people get discouraged and decide like, well, it didn't work the first time, so I'm not gonna do it anymore, okay? So, other questions on that?
No, makes total sense.
Okay, so the next one is fairly simple. I'm gonna sit down because I'm an old man. I'm gonna have you hand me the end of your leash here. Okay, and go and give a tap. Tip. 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 There we go. Wait a moment. There we go. I want him more in so intimate space. Okay? So here, what we're doing is now programming the brain to come to. Because we have human approaches dog, and the easiest way is from the side, like I showed you, as opposed to straight from the front. Until, like, you might find maybe a child that you've used repeatedly, he sees them and he starts wiggling.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm
Right.
blown away.
What?
That he's sitting there with you, I mean, truly, I'm compared to like what he did with Gavin, that's like.
Yeah,
totally
he wouldn't have
different.
approached Gavin at all.
Yeah,
Oh, like coming into the personal space?
yeah,
Yeah.
we
So-
even tried, so what we tried, and it didn't go well, okay, her friend from college came in town to stay for 2 days. So we walked, Gavin waited on the street, we walked Blue out to
Yeah,
meet
we
in a
tried to do a
neutral
walk and then
territory.
we did like a slow introduction.
And as soon as he
and
realized
treats.
Gavin was with her, he lost
And
his
staying.
business.
Yeah.
Lost his business, lunging, snapping, snarling,
Mhm.
and it was pretty much every time Gavin moved inside the house, outside of the house, it didn't matter, he was like,
Enemy number one.
yeah.
Sure. So, in my experience, right, if I try to pull Blue towards me, let's say this was like early in the training, right? We had done nothing, I try to pull him towards me. I would expect to see a lot of resistance.
Resistance, yeah.
Which then turns into aggression, because I'm forcing him to do something he doesn't want, right?
Yeah.
Just like with humans, right? Someone trying to force you to do something you want, or you're not gonna become defensive. So here, when I've worked with dogs, and it could be literally I'm trying to pull them, and we get a lot of that response, and they're like just like bucking around, and then we switch it. And it could be within minutes, and I'll just pull the dog, and I'll tap on the remote, and the dog will move in and be as calm as can be. And the owner's like, well, what's the big difference? I'm like, because remote makes the dog think they made the decision. If I drag Blue into my personal space, he's not making that decision.
Yeah.
I'm forcing him. But here I just lightly pulled that leash, you tapped, and his brain can't go. okay? Now, I can tell you right now, he's not comfortable, obviously, because he's giving me his back and he's stooping his head here, right?
Yeah.
So, but this is what I was talking about, you have to condition the brain to move too, okay?
Yep.
So like, earlier, if that first approach that I was showing you was like with kids and you're reading every movement, kid approaches, kid comes to the side, kid makes contact, kid begins to touch, kid goes up the neck, kid goes to the head. Those are all the individual steps, and I'm reading each one, and I'm going, where does Blue become too uncomfortable, right? And I don't move to the next step until that step is resolved. So like, let's say I was petting him, he was growling, right? And you corrected him, I would just keep in that same spot, and so eventually maybe minutes go by, and then he's fine, and then I go to the next place, and maybe begin to grab it a bit. I correct it, and I stay there for a bit, and he's fine. I might reset, take go away, come back, come back in again, and reset the situation, and then start to go over here, and then you start to growl. Like I'm slowly going to the next step, okay? And this one here, different. So like, even if he doesn't want anything to do with the person, then we have this, right? And I just give the person a leash, give the tap, and he just pretty much straightforward, maybe 2 or 3 taps, moved into my personal space. And I was just being a little bit more demanding. I wanted him in my space, okay? So like, when I've done this with other dogs, like I would be in the home, I'd be on the couch, and trying to get the dog to jump up on my lap was like the hardest thing for them, because they're going into my immediate, intimate space. Okay, so I'm sure for you, if you sit down, he'll come over and put his head and all that stuff,
Yeah,
right? No problem, because he knows and trusts you. But for someone like me, it's really uncomfortable for him, okay? So the initial step is always just come into the person's personal space, right? And right here, doesn't look like we're doing much, but this is actually how I help a lot of dogs get used to people. It's the brain can only stay unsettled for so long. Okay, so it's like being angry. You can only be angry for so long. And you can, now you're starting to think about it, really should have here. Wait a moment. If you get angry about something, you can't stay angry forever. This is fine. Okay? At some point, your brain lets it go, unless something reminds you of that, whatever angered you, right? And then if it does remind you, you get angry again, but then after some time, it goes away.
Yeah.
Same thing for the dog. To be in that kind of unsettled state is energy. It takes the brain, it takes, they're actively having to think on it. And eventually it gets overwhelming, that the brain just goes, and then he's there, now he's calmer, and he's thinking, all right, like, I've been next to Jesse for the last hour, I didn't like it, but this is getting exhausting. And he just starts to get more relaxed. And I just spend, with him just like this, like you watch a movie or something, right? And then we remove him, and you keep repeating that. And eventually he's just like, oh, we've hung out, 10 times. You're not a bad dude. He starts to open up. So like I had a border collie that I worked with many, many years ago, who from 20 to 30 feet away would get spooked from people. He could not pee, could not poop if anybody was out. I had to find a cove for him in the middle of South Loop to use the bathroom. That cove was such a lifesaver. But the way I got him used to me was I tethered him to me. I just put a leash on him and I clipped him to me. I'm like, you have to be with me all day, right? In the beginning, it was like this. There was constant tension on the leash because like, I don't want to be next to you. But that gets exhausting. And eventually, the brain started to open up, and the next thing I know, he's like laying on top of my feet. Okay, and I also did work like this with him, where I would remote him into my personal space. Because his brain he was an extreme case, where his brain would reset, and then he just want to run away. So then I used remote to help counter him, like I did with Blue here, but then keeping him in my space for long periods of time. So same thing for Blue, like let's say you have a friend come over who's never met before, you do your door exercise, right? You could do a little bit of the touch exercise, and then maybe you're gonna just sit down and watch a movie or something. You just hand Blue, hand the Blue's leash to them, do a little tap, he's sitting at their feet, and just tell them when you're gonna get up, or if you need to get up, let us know, because we have a nervous trigger, okay? Right. And then we remove Blue, they get up, they do the thing, and you can either leave them alone to decompress, or you can press it again, right? You decide. And then eventually, he's like, all right, well, I've had to hang out with you for X amount of times, for a period of time, and it's been fine. And you'll start to see him open up. And people look at this and they go like, this is like so simple. I'm like, dogs are simple creatures. Humans have made things that's in depth.
What is that?
He wants to move away and go to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
he
saw
actually,
some shaking here for a second. Good with
he
that?
actually, you moved and he moved towards you.
Let's see what happens here. Good. No, now what can happen with these guys too is once the brain feels like it's overwhelmed, they'll want to move away. Like earlier when you flinched, right? They want. So I let the brain do what it wants to do, and then finally he's like, all right, I've been for 10 minutes, I'm done. He starts to go. Just hold the leash, tap. He comes back in. So what we're doing here is we're not allowing the brain to use that flight response. So he's thinking, all right, well the only thing I can do is just chill. Okay.
See, it's you. You just want to scratch your back and he,
No, I can see it, yeah.
it's not when Jesse moves, it's when you move.
I'm the problem. In all the situations.
See, right there, you moved.
Yeah, I saw his little move there.
Yeah, I definitely think that's what happened on the porch with Elliot though, is I moved and then he got issued.
Mm-hmm. See, so he's looking a little bit.
Yeah, he's a little chuffy.
Yeah.
He's almost to the point where
His
he's
eyes.
gonna roll over though.
Yeah.
No, but he's chuffing, like he.
Yeah, it's like half and half. It's kind of like, are you gonna roll over, or is it kind of like? Because
Yeah.
I'm leaning over as well. Yeah, and I'm pushing a little bit here. There's a little bit of resistance. And if I push into him, there's a little bit of resistance. So that resistance is tension, right? So like another dog, like somebody noted, like looks like he might roll over, is when I put a little pressure on them, they just give into it. And here there's a little pushback.
Yeah, I saw it. It was-
But that's the antisocialness. It's not wanting to let him go to the next thing. Does that make sense? Like it's a hump for him. So it's kind of like the thought process is there, but he's like, yeah, but I'm not comfortable still.
Yeah.
So I don't press it, but I can test it and just see like where he's at. So that's why earlier when I was petting him, like there's a little bit of tension, but it was more so by the upper shoulders. You know, where other dogs you just feel their entire body is just like clenched like this. Okay, so I think he's perfectly capable of socializing. It's just a matter of you have to work through that yourself, which takes time. But this stuff doesn't happen overnight anyways. You know, so like especially now with COVID, unless like you have someone coming over on a
Yeah,
regular
that's
basis.
the whole thing. It's like with COVID, you're on limited number of people who he doesn't know, and then. with
People willing to
COVID,
come over.
And then
during the
people
pandemic.
who, you've limited number of people who wanna come over and play with a nasty dog.
Yeah, so that's obviously created a lot of,
Maybe Danny again.
No, I think Gavin's the ultimate test. Gavin's been wanting to come back and visit anyway, so I think we should do that.
Yeah, Gavin's a nice calm energy, so
how old's Gavin?
he's,
22.
Okay, yeah, so
he's
yeah.
an adult.
Sure.
Yeah, he's an
Yeah.
adult bully.
Yeah, and you said that was enemy number 1 earlier?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a good test.
He's also, like, I don't know, we're thinking about moving in together again too. We used to live together. So one of my concerns is down the road, I'm gonna be having some kind of roommate. So is the best way to introduce him to someone he's gonna be like living with, like this whole situation just very slowed down?
Yeah, and then like, so to build a relationship, we do activities. Okay, so humans have limitless things that we can do with each other to build a friendship or to build a bond, right? Go to dinner, go to the movies, talk on the phone, go for a walk, go jogging, go to a club. Like there's so many things that we can do that
Right.
builds friendships. For dogs, it's very limited. And the 3 key things are resting, traveling, and playing. Okay, so unless you fully trust a person, probably not gonna play. So that leaves traveling or walking and resting. This is the resting state. Okay, so like going on a walk for each other, even getting Gavin the remote and like him doing a little bit of stuff, because then it starts to transfer like, oh, you also have control over me.
Okay.
Okay, and then just going for a nice walk or just watching a movie or something and Blue's just there at the feet. But just, we're doing the precautions of, let me know if you're gonna move because of nervous response. Okay, that's why we're doing that. Until Blue's is like comfortable with them, just like he's comfortable with you guys, then that nervous response shouldn't matter. Okay, the other thing is, like I've had plenty of clients that have had like dog reactive dogs or dog aggressive dogs, and they rescue dogs or like foster them, or they get a dog. like afterwards. And that doesn't always happen, but that has a higher chance of being successful because there's no escape. At some point, the dog is like, all right, I guess we live together. You know? So it doesn't always work that way, but in my experience, more often than not, especially when they've done training, it's not a problem. You know, and we do same thing. I go, we can do slow introduction, where I have like another dog. You know, the dog they're not around each other unsupervised. One dog's kennel, they're just kind of getting used to being in each other's space, and we slowly start to integrate it into like now they're loose with each other. Okay, so and with humans it's easier because you can tell human what to do and give them directions that they can follow. So.
Out of curiosity, so let's say like I moved in with Gavin and I was gone for work, so Blue was in his crate and Gavin was moving about the house and Blue was either growling or barking or something in the crate. Would it be a good idea to have like Gavin correct him, like if he was wearing the collar?
Right, because if he's responding to Gavin moving, then there's the distress, right? Which there's a comfort adapter meant for extended wear.
Yeah.
So that like he could, you know, if Gavin's not home till like 4 hours later or something, right? So he doesn't get prepped, because he's not gonna be able to put the remote on him, obviously.
Right, yeah.
Is that yes, that you have to correct him, because then he has to start learning like, okay, like, even if mom's not around,
I still have to, yeah.
exactly, I can't behave this way with you.
Okay.
Okay? Great. Any other questions?
No, not yet.
They're very simple exercises. Everybody's always just like, wow, really that simple? I'm like, yeah, because dogs are simple. Humans make things complicated. But yeah, resting state
That
and
makes a lot more sense to me, having him move. Because that makes sense to me sitting here, because I was the one at the other end of the leash, and I was constantly putting tension, because I didn't want him getting too close to Gavin.
yeah, that
So
creates more.
I was
Yeah,
pulling
we
him
didn't do
back.
it right.
So
It
he's-
felt wrong
so
when we were
he's
doing it.
coming in to get treats from Gavin, but at the same time, I'm pulling
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
You didn't want him to snap or anything.
Right.
That makes complete sense. That is actually how, if you told me that, I would have told you it didn't work out well.
It didn't work.
Yeah.
That's exactly, I mean, that's truthfully what I did for like 3 hours. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
My arms were exhausted.
So, good workout. Door exercise, okay? And then you can either do the approach, or you can do, they're interchangeable.
Yeah.
Okay, the kid one is the one you want to do from the side step by step, because it's kids. Adults, you have a bit more wiggle room, okay? But yeah, I mean, literally just like, come over, Blue comes to him, they just hang out. And I would just tell Gavin in the beginning, just ignore him, don't pet him.
Okay.
Right, just like, and what you may see is Blue will start to sniff him. I think he sniffed my foot or something earlier. That was a little bit of curiosity come out, and then eventually like, he'll like look up and like start batting his hand with his nose, like saying like, give me attention. A little bit of attention, then go back to ignoring him. Okay, ignoring dogs typically draws curiosity if they're in the right mindset. Okay, otherwise if you're stuck in territorial behavior or suspicion, you're not going to see that.
Right.
That's why that exercise is so important. Now, if you're meeting Gavin out like at the park in a neutral area, it's a little bit different. There's nothing to trigger territorial behavior, but definitely coming to the home for that exercise, you want to make sure you do that. Okay? All right, ladies, I have to get to another client.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome.